Hi, welcome back to Jane's Stories of Life. Well, it's Saturday, and Saturday is special for many reasons. As a child, Saturday was especially special because it was movie day. First of all, you had to get your work finished in the morning because Saturday afternoon was movie day. Yes, we went to the movies every Saturday, I believe. I think that was the parents' way of having some free time because usually somebody's older sibling took you and the theater was filled with children. I don't remember too many adults being there. It was only 25 cents to get in. There were two features. It was a double feature. Usually one was a Western, the other one was probably an adventure of some kind like Superman. There was a newsreel because this was in the late 40s, early 50s, before television news was, before many of us had televisions, or before, television news was something that came into the home. So there was a recap of what happened that week in the world. There were previews of what was coming. There would also be, one of the interesting things was that one of the movies would play, and then at the most suspenseful part, it would stop. And there would be a banner across the screen that would say, "To be continued," which meant you had to come back the next Saturday to find out what happened. So that kept you coming back for more. Popcorn was 10 cents. Maybe if you had butter, maybe it was another few pennies or maybe a nickel, but it was cheap. It was definitely not what it is today. They maybe sold candy and popcorn. There were no drinks sold, but there was a soda vending machine. You put your money in and a cup was supposed to drop down. The soda was supposed to go into the cup and then you reached in and got that. However, sometimes the cup did not drop down, but the soda continued to flow. So the soda that you had paid for just went right down the drain and that was it. So most of the time you did not bother to get soda because it was going to be a waste of your money. The things did change eventually, by the time you got to be a little older, drive-ins were something that you could go to perhaps, depending on, parents and supervision and blah, 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 blah. Families did go to drive-ins quite frequently, however, because you paid for, just the cost of the car. Date-wise, you know what that meant. Some of you who live in the Dover area, or perhaps the Delaware area, when we lived in Dover from 1990 to 2019, we lived across the highway from what was the last drive-in theater in the state of Delaware, the Diamond State Drive-In, I think was the name of it. On Saturday nights, the shoulder of the highway was lined with cars waiting to get in. The drive-in showed the same movies that were being released that week in the local theaters. So they were current movies, but it was cheaper to go to the drive-in and more convenient for many. After our children were born, and by then theaters a lot of them were in malls, and you took your children to see the various Disney things, and as they grew older, they went to the movies with friends, and that's when theaters really grew and picked up. There were more, I don't know if you'd call them chains, but the movies were very popular during the 70s and 80s, and continue to be for that matter. Eventually, the movie services, rental of movies, came into being. I remember when Blockbuster was very popular. You rented whatever it was, whether it was a CD or a VHS tape. You go to Blockbuster, and that was a source for entertainment. And when Netflix first started, that was a subscription. It was a rental. You rented movies and they mailed them to you, and then you sent that one back and a new one was sent. Then Redbox came into boy, I'm having trouble with this holding. Redbox came into popularity and kind of wiped out some of the other services. Now that we have streaming television services, you have, Netflix, and you have your Hulu, and you have Prime movies, and of course the theaters are still thriving. I learned once my hearing became a challenge, I had trouble in the theaters because the volume was loud enough, but those of us with hearing challenges, sometimes the words and things are muffled and it's hard to understand what people are saying. So I stopped going to movies altogether. I did learn within the last few years that theaters do offer closed captioning services. So when the new Color Purple was released several years ago, I wanted to see that. I did go to the theater and use the equipment for closed captioning, and that was a blessing. I enjoyed that, but I'm not really a movie person, so I think that's the last movie that I have seen. The memories of the movies were special. Those were the good old days. They even had what they called movie magazines. I think they came out either every week, every other week, maybe once a month. But the magazines featured information about movie stars, about making of the movies, about the movie industry. My cousin Jo collected those, and she really has a career in photojournalism. Really, that was definitely an offspring of many of her experiences with interest in film and filmmaking and journalism and writing and movie, photography and so forth. But you've heard me say that when Morgan and I were dating, our dates always involved popcorn. We either went to the movies and had popcorn, we went to sporting events and had popcorn. I don't think we ever went out to dinner. I think we just went places that sold popcorn. We'd go to some clubs and things like that for later night entertainment, but no, otherwise it was always popcorn. As a matter of fact, I still pop popcorn frequently. I always pop popcorn for football games. I had some popcorn today that I popped, not microwave, the good old in the pot oil kernels, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, movies are just something that I enjoyed. I don't anymore, but I have so many wonderful memories of time spent at the movies. Most of you don't know what I'm talking about. These experiences are totally foreign. Your grandparents probably can relate to some popcorn being 10, 15, 20 cents. Your parents probably were back in the era when the prices began to jump up. I don't know how families afford the movies anymore, because everything between the popcorn and pizza and all those things, none of those things were part of our movie going experiences. But I cherish my memories anyway. Cherish your memories and pass them on.